everyone, this is April, aka Ink Flexibility. So these videos are about my top favorite Flex Fountain Pens of 2023. It's not going to be Flex beginner friendly. A lot of them are actually more suited for my lettering style, and some of them may not be very easy to acquire. So let's begin. So I don't really have a phone holder, so I hope this way I can still film the video to show you guys like some of the Flex Fountain Pens that I really like during this year. And I chose about 6 of them, and among these 6, there will be 4 are vintage and 2 are modern. Or one of them you may already notice, this one is actually a Waterman 12 PSF. I posted before on my Instagram, and it's a little bit difficult to see. No. Anyway, this one is the Waterman 12 PSF, so it's their early model for the lever filler, and I like it because it's an extra fine, and you can actually write really fine hairlines with it, and it's a full flex nib. And the second one, the body is from Hongdian. I believe it's the N9, and then I swapped the nib with a Fairchild number 5 gold nib. It's from their dip pen errors. It can write really fine, like the dip nibs, but because of it has tipping, so it writes really smooth, and it doesn't splash ink like the dip nibs. The steel dip nibs that we use nowadays to practice calligraphy. And the third one, the body is the Moonman C4. It's actually a very large front body. It holds actually quite comfortably because it doesn't have any, big step down, and it fits quite nicely in my hand. And then for the nib, it's actually also a Victorian era gold dip nib. It actually has lots of tipping. You can see it in here. And that's why I kind of use it very often, because it has lots of tipping, so I'm not scared that, it's going to be wear out anytime soon. And the nib is a E.S. Johnson. I believe it's a number 5. Yeah, I believe it's a number 5. And I fitted a number 5 plastic feed in here. It actually supplied the ink flow very well. I didn't see, especially with the Japanese style eyedropper, I don't really have any railroading, so it's a pretty good combination. It's my most often used vintage Flex Fountain Pen. And then the 4th vintage one, the body, you can clearly see it's a Leonardo. It's a Leonardo Momento Zero Seaweed. It's one of my favorite color. It just, look at it, it's so gorgeous. And inside there, I fitted with Evertot number 4, also from Victoria era gold dip nib. It has a little bit of tipping, but as you can see, it's not very visible anymore. Because of there's just not much tipping left, I don't use it very much, because I'm just scared that the tipping is gonna be gone any day or any time I use this pen. So mostly I don't use this one for practicing any calligraphy or lettering. I only use it, once a while, just to feel that softness, snap back, just to feel the best Flex writing experience. So I will demonstrate the writing experience later. So, but let's go on and finish introducing all these pens. And the 5th one is, the body is a Urushi lacquer body, and the size is about Pilot 74.3, I believe, for the size. And then I fitted a Pilot 742 SM nib. It's not actually SM nib because it's a modified into a needlepoint full flex nib by Tokyo Station Pens. So if you follow my Instagram, you probably have seen it before. I have posted videos and also reviews on my Instagram about this pens already. Again, I will demonstrate the flex writing in this video as well. And the last one is also the second modern Flex Fountain Pen in this video. This is Fountain Pen Revolution Himalaya V2. And the nib in this pen is actually their 14 karat gold ultra flex nib. It looks exactly like their stainless steel version, except this one is 14 karat gold. It's so much softer, and it can flex a lot wider as well. So this is actually a flex monster among all of them. And I will demonstrate the writing experience and talk about why I included this one in my top favorites among the Flex Fountain Pens. Here's for some flex writing. So let's do it one by one. So the first one is our Waterman 12 PSF, and it's made in around 1915 to 1917. So you can see that the lever is actually replaced before. It's not the nickel plated, it has been restored, and you can see how fine the nib. I can't see it quite well, but Yeah, so the nib, the very tip is actually quite fine. That's why I can achieve very fine hairlines. But so let's have some flex writing. It's not like it's a full flex nib. So you can see it can actually flex quite wide. Depending on the ink I use and paper I use, it can create the hairlines that is comparable to the modern dip nibs, which are quite impressive. It's not the softest nib I ever use, or the flexiest, but it has very strong snap back. A lot of people talk about, how snappy their Flex fountain pen is, and then do that, press, this kind of demonstration. I find it not very helpful because mostly I use Flex fountain pen for lettering or calligraphy. So this kind of flex and then drag, this kind of demonstration is just not very helpful to see how snappy it is. And I usually do this kind of S, lots of S's, just to see how good it snaps back, because you can see them from here, like very thin, and then when you go back up, it's also very thin. You know that, like, it has very good line expressions. So this is one of my top favorites. And then the next one, this one is the Fairchild. So this is from Victoria era, like beginning of 1900s or end of 1800s, like somewhere around that time. And I've also mentioned it on my Instagram. Leroy Fairchild actually was one of the supplier for Waterman at their early stage. Let me see if there's ink. Okay, good, there's ink. One thing about this pen is just because this one is a cartridge converter style feeling, so I sometimes will have to actually prime the nib a bit, even though I fitted a Hongden ebonite feed, but I find it's actually still not enough, so I have to prime the nib a bit in order to do lots of, maximum flex writing. And I'm actually thinking to move this nib to a piston filler later. So I'm just going to demonstrate how this flex nibs can write. Oop, you can see the railroading already, because I have mentioned it. The cartridge converter is actually not the best for flex nibs. It's also a full flex nibs. I would say it may even be a super flex, because it can reach, up to 2 millimeter or more. Yeah, with this pen, I have to be really slow. And we're priming the nib a bit. It's not the problem of the nib, it's the pen itself. That's why I need to transplant it to a piston filler pen later on. But you can see it can achieve really fine hairlines and also really thick lines. Even though it railroads quite a bit because of the pen, but I still really like the nib because the hairlines and also the very snappy feeling. You can take a closer look, like for example, during the E and right here. So you can see that it actually go back to a very thin line. And also right here, the L, you can see that it switched back to the thin line like right away. So the snappy feeling, the hairlines, and the super flexy line expression. So I just love this pen really, like a lot. And also the pen body, look at it. It just looks so pretty. So I'll see if I'm going to continue with this body or move the nib some on a different pen, but we'll see. So the third one is the Moonman C4 I mentioned in the beginning. And the nib is the E.S. Johnson nib. So I mentioned it's actually my workhorse pen. So even though it's not like super soft or like super thin hairlines, it's kind of in the middle of everything, and it's still very flexy. So let's see its writing samples. Oops, I just filled the ink in this pen, so I may need to get the ink going a little bit. Look at this. Oop, I'm gonna feel this just to show you guys how wide it can flex. But again, depends on the ink and paper. Sometimes it can get some railroading. Of course, I don't necessarily flex to the extreme every time I write, but it just feels good to flex that wide. So look at it. It's definitely also one of the flex monster nibs I have. I would say this is probably like 3 mm wide. It's really flexy, but depending on the ink I use, sometimes I can get railroading if I flex that wide. But for my regular practicing, for example, just for like regular practicing, I don't really get railroading that much. And although it doesn't have like the very thin hairlines compared to the Waterman or the Leonardo Fairchild, but it's still very thin. I would say like about Japanese extra fine. So like with the contrast with the flex, it just looks really nice. And yes, this is the pen that I use the most often during 2023. Okay, here comes the last and also my favorite of the favorite in 2023. This nib is just to mention again, it's actually Advertod nib number 4 size, and I fit it into the Joho number 6 nib unit, the ebonite nib units from Flexible Nib Factory, because again it's a cartridge converter filling system. So sometimes it can still get railroading when I flex it like to the extreme, and you also using some dry ink like Sailor or Troublemaker or Pannonia. So usually those ink are drier and I can get railroading. So, but one thing about I like the Moonman C4 from Leonardo is you can actually take the end cap down, and if you need to prime the nib, you can just twist the piston a little bit. So it kind of like a piston filler pen, which is easier to prime your pen. So I kind of like this. So I may change it to put this nib unit into a piston filler pen or an eyedropper pen later, but right now this is where it's fitting. Again, I mentioned it before, it doesn't have a lot of tipping left, so I really like this pen because it's so soft, so snappy, and very flexy, like everything you can think of when you're thinking about wet noodles flex nibs. So this is the definition of it. The only thing about it is just there's not a lot of tipping left, so oh well, I can live with that. So here is just it just feels so nice writing with it. It flex so effortlessly. You can see, like it actually, it flexes about like 3 mm, like the one from the E.S. Johnson. But the difference is it doesn't take a lot of pressure to flex that wide, and it just feels so nice when you press down the nib. It just kind of spread out, even with like you don't need a lot of pressure to spread those times. Oh, just like what I said, it railroaded a bit. The ink I'm using right now, I believe it is Sailor Studio 243. So Sailor ink's a little bit dry, so that kind of contributes to the railroading as well. And it can also achieve those really thin hairlines. So, yep, so this is my wet noodle vintage nib. It's super soft and very flexy and very snappy. You can see from the writing samples, like when I drop the pressure, it goes back to the very thin hairlines right away. This is what I'm talking about, like strong snapback. It's not about the pressure that you need to flex those ties. It's actually about the speed where those ties go back to the unflexed state. So yes, this is my favorite of the favorites, although I don't use this very often. So the next one will be the modern Flex Nib. The body doesn't really matter. This is a customized Wuxi lacquer body. And what's important is the nib. This is modified by Tokyo Station Pens, and it's a Pilot 742 SM nib, modified into a needlepoint and a full flex. It's actually really soft, this nib. It's one of the softest nibs I have among my modern pens. And if you're interested how soft is it, I also have a chart to compare different modern flex fountain pens I have. But here I'm just going to demonstrate like how good it writes. It's not the flaxiest nib I have. May have to prime the nib a little bit just in case. The maximum of this is about 2 millimeters, if I remember correctly. So I don't usually, flex it to its extreme because it's very soft. It's equipped with the Ebonite feed from Flexible Nib Factory as well. And the needlepoint grind actually makes quite nice hairlines when you write. The snapback may not as comparable as those vintage dip nibs back in the Victoria era, back in like the late 1800s or the beginning of 1900s, but it's still really nice to write because how soft it is. And the ink float is actually quite good. The vintage nibs are kind of hard to find, so I would highly recommend this one if you're looking for like a professional calligraphy tool. Pretty good. So the last one I want to talk about is the 14 karat gold Ultra Flex from Fountain Pen Revolution. So the body actually doesn't really matter, it's just the Himalaya V2, and then if I'm going to choose again, I may actually going to get the Jaipur V2 instead of the cartridge converter Himalaya. It just, this 14 karat gold Ultra Flex can really flex a lot, which means it needs a lot of ink. Which means if you're going to write a lot, like flex a lot, you're going to constantly fill the ink. So I would recommend people, if you like to flex a lot and practice your flex writing with this nib, like get the Jaipur V2 instead of the Himalaya. But anyway, let's go demonstrate how flexy it is. Because I wrote a review before and calling it Flex Monster. So let's just see how flexy it is. Whew, look at that. I call this Flex Monster for a reason. It's not really like full flex. I'm just writing it down so that you can compare with those different flex fountain pens. One thing about this nib is just it's actually considerably soft, and so you don't need a lot of pressure to spread the tines. But the only thing about this nib is it needs a lot of ink, and it lay down a lot of ink. The problem of it is the snapback is not the top. So sometimes when you're trying to do, like you flex and then you drop the pressure and then upstroke, like the ink can pull into the upstroke. So I do have to like disconnect the downstroke and the upstroke so that the ink won't pull to the upstroke. I'll show you if I connect them, you'll see what I mean maybe. Okay, so here you can actually kind of see, it actually is thicker. Like the beginning of the upstroke is actually way thicker than these guys. It's mostly because the ink from the downstroke actually pull into the upstroke. So you can see that the upstrokes actually get thicker. And so one thing I usually, when I write with this pen, I disconnect the downstroke from the upstroke so the ink won't pull in there. And also depending on the paper, you may not get very thin hairlines, because the hairlines minimum may be about 0.3 to 0.4. That's the best you can achieve. But I do find that there are some other paper that are actually better with this pen. The one that I usually use with this pen is the watercolor paper. I just really like how effortlessly this pen can to flex, and also how flexy it is. And the most important thing is it has a lot of tipping left, so you can also send it off to your favorite nibmeister to modify this nib into a needlepoint. And you can also just use it as it is to do any kind of calligraphy drills. And it's modern, so you don't have to be scared that you wreck this one and you can't get a replacement anymore. So it's one of the reasons why I use this nib a lot, because I can just I can do all kinds of flexing with it, and I don't need to be afraid that I'm gonna break it. And so that's it. So these are all the Flex fountain pens of 2023 for me. Okay, until next time, happy writing. Bye.